Welcome back to the Georgia Show. I'm here with Bill Quinn. We've been working hard to bring you what's going on in Georgia and the surrounding areas. We want to just give a shout out to the Pentagon for giving us press credentials. We'll be going to New Media Week the first week in December in Washington, D.C. to get the lay of the land and get our cubicle in the Pentagon. Bill, how's that?
That sounds great. Just make sure that you know who's looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we have a lot of relationships there, as you know, and we look forward to that. And we'll be bringing you that integrated coverage across the CDM network. We just got done with our conference in Austin, Texas with Children's Health Defense. Big success, and had a lot of people come up to us and say, wow, we really watch you guys all the time, and we appreciate that feedback. And it makes us feel good that we're actually doing a good job. Bill, we've got a lot to go through today, but what do you have on your plate?
Well, we're going to talk about generally the movement across many of the spectrums within election integrity. There does feel like we are approaching something of a crack in the dike. I can't really explain it. It isn't just one thing, but there's many things that would suggest that stuff is moving. And so we'll talk about some of those. We're going to talk about some things going on locally that we wanted to bring up, and not just because of their local dynamic, but because, like many things that we've talked about in past weeks, perhaps these are harbingers of things happening in other counties across Georgia, or maybe counties across the country, and we want to make sure people know of them. And then we'll have a couple other early warning things to talk about. Some stuff going on with the GOP, and potentially some stuff going on with the legislature that is rumbling around in the Patriot community. And I wanted to make sure we talk about it. And you know, the best disinfectant for badness is bright, shiny light. So
that is so true. We'll get to all that. I just want to give a shout out to our no ad subscriptions. Go to my.cdm.press. That's my.cdm.press for our audio audience to sign up to get all of our content across CDM, which is growing rapidly with no advertisements popping up on your phone or elsewhere. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. A lot of people just pay the $100, forget about it, and it's very easy to go on your phone and get all the news coming through our main channels without those advertisements that we have to run, but I know people aren't very fond of. Also, sign up for our social media, CDM1 on Rumble. If you haven't done yet, go to our YouTube channel, CDM, and subscribe, please. Do it right now, just while you're thinking about it. It doesn't take long. And just so we got to grow our numbers there since we got kicked off, but we're regrowing. And we're getting a lot of good feedback on a lot of the videos we're posting. So we're going to continue that effort. And we're brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com, which is also growing in content. If you're ready, Bill, I got some things I want to talk about. And then
please kick us off, Todd.
So I got a little intro to the next segment just for you, Bill. So here we go. Where is that? Oh, there. So we're going to talk about the 7 mountains tonight, and I've been doing some research on this, and the New Apostolic Reformation is behind this movement. And what I'm being told is that it is kind of an apparent theology of Christianity, and that it is pushing an agenda that's not really Orthodox Christianity, but maybe for something else. And it's kind of famous in Georgia, and I think all our audience knows why. But Candace Owens came out and started talking about this week, which I found fascinating because she is now the #1 podcast in the world. I mean, people don't realize that. The #1 in the world, ahead of everybody else, Joe Rogan and everybody else. So she's just killing it with viewership globally, millions and millions of people watching this. And I wanted to just play what she has to say about all of this. And I think maybe you'll find some familiarity with what she's saying here in the great state of Georgia. So here we go. Let me bring that up.
Understanding right away, telling the public, the Republicans, that we had to fight for justice. They went out immediately following the election results. One person was Lance Wallno. Okay, I want you to remember this guy's name, Lance Wallno. Immediately, just 3 days after the election of 2020, on November 6th, he publishes this onto his Facebook page, okay? It says, we're going to expose the fraud and stop the steal. The Lord our God is with us, and we were built for this battle. Be strong and courageous. So that's 3 days after he's saying, stop the steal, be strong, be courageous. And Lance, who is a charismatic preacher, wasn't the only charismatic preacher or pastor that instantly threw their weight behind, quote unquote, stopping the steal. Actually, 4 out of the 6 protest permits that were issued on January 6th were issued to independent, charismatic Christian groups, okay? 15 of these pastors and leaders surrounded Trump at the White House leading up to the January 6th Stop the Steal rally, telling him that the war was now spiritual. So they're in his ear. This is spiritual. This is what you have to do, Mr. President, okay? There's an article about that. It's the new Apostolic Reformation drove the January 6th riots. So why was it overlooked by the House Select Committee, this person asks, okay? NAR, I brought this up to you before. Lance Wallnau is in this article. So is Sean Foyt. Now you're thinking these names might sound familiar. Certainly Sean Foyt, I brought him up to you regarding TPUS Faith, who started to lead these events that they were having. So who is Lance Wallnau? Well, he is one of these NAR preachers, like I said, who came up with their 7 mountain mandate, okay? Charlie began to become very interested in the 7 mountain mandate. I would say like he became mesmerized by the 7 mountain mandate. He became friends with Lance Wallnau. I'm going to let you listen to Lance himself describe this 7 mountain mandate in his own words.
Hi, I'm Lance Wallnau. I want to talk to you for a moment about this concept called the 7M mandate. In reality, it started with a conversation I had in the year 2000. I had been talking to Lauren Cunningham, who's the founder of Youth with a Mission. And Lauren was sharing with me about a conversation he had had with Bill Bright. The two of them were visited, actually, by the Lord within the same 24 hours. And God spoke to them and said they had a message to give the other man. And the message was that there are 7 molders of culture, or 7 world kingdoms, and that he who could take those kingdoms could take the harvest of nations. Now, this illustration is the way I see it. I look at it this way. I see those 7 molders of culture as being the religion mountain, as a metaphor for something you've got to take or climb. Then we have education, we could say, family. These are in no particular order of importance. They all represent the forces that shape societies and nations. Government, media, art, which is the entertainment mountain, and business, which is where we have the economics mountain happening also. Now, these 7 fields of influence are very powerful, so powerful, in fact, that he who occupies the top of those mountains can literally shape the agenda that forms nations. The foundation of the prosperity of nations is going to have to be the teaching of Jesus. The good news is you can do that covert or you can do that overt. You can be, like I always say, you could actually be following that thing from Jehovah Rophi, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Sidkenu, or Jehovah Sneaky. Because God has a way of getting into positions, companies, businesses, nations, and communities before the devil even knows what got in there. Because the gospel is bigger than just the church mountain. It's the gospel that covers the whole earth.
So what he's describing there and what they believe is that there are new prophets, there are new apostles, they have the 7 mountain mandate. And when he is speaking about covertly, he means that, okay? This is a philosophy of infiltration. He says, but before people even know, boom, he describes it as the devil, but before people know, boom, everyone around them is actually working for a higher purpose. Man, I gotta say, kind of sort of reminds me of what happened to Charlie, right? This is kind of where this is going. Turning Point Faith, everywhere that I'm investigating, Turning Point Faith keeps coming up. These characters.
So, Bill, I found that very, very interesting and possibly, and I'm not making any accusations, I don't have proof, but it rings familiar with what we've been seeing in Georgia, in my opinion.
Well, I think we can talk about that pretty openly, and I think this is a theme that I think we should explore for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, just going back for a minute to the gentleman whose video Candace played, Did you notice that he used a couple of mnemonics rather than the words? So he didn't call it at first the Seven Mountain Mandate. And I've seen writings elsewhere that said they began getting the folks that espoused this stuff began getting nervous because it began getting noticed.
Mhm.
It's unique enough where people remember it. Seven Mountain Mandate. And he called it the 7M Mandate, and then used a mountain description later on in his talk. But why would he change the name? That seems interesting to me.
Mhm.
Two, he talked about being covert about it, and he talked about influencing these centers of power. Now, I do not pretend to be a biblical scholar, nor nearly as godly a person as many others. I try to do what I think is right and so forth. But I don't remember many of Jesus Christ's teachings talking about taking over organizations or influences across society.
In a covert manner.
Certainly not in a covert manner. He talked about, I believe, speaking the truth, speaking from the Lord's teaching, speaking from the being a good person and doing the right things, and following both the Bible's teachings and his own and Scripture's teachings. But I don't remember all this organizational stuff, and that strikes me as similar to what we've seen with these people that, and I just heard it in the last 2 days, carrying religion, carrying Christianity on their sleeve and quoting it as if they somehow are experts at it and experts at offering and supporting it with those that they work and interface with. And we've seen this play out in things like, unfortunately, the First Liberty scandal, the Ponzi scheme, where much of the pitch, if you will, seemed to be centered around the Christian workings of what First Liberty claimed they were supporting. Yet the people that got harmed, in fact, were in large part Christians and conservatives. How would you justify, if you knew you had a problem getting people's investments back? How would you justify doing that to people, taking their money, supposedly investing it, and now we're learning more and more almost by the day about some of these loans that for many years now have been in default, and it was very clear, or should have been clear to people, that these were not going to get paid back, and yet they kept taking more and more money. We've also seen other cases with people doing this. They quote scripture, or apparently quote scripture. Often they get it wrong, I think. But they act as if it's somehow their right, their ability. They're somehow better than other people in knowing this stuff. I find that, and I think we've had either a priest or a pastor on that said that is a danger signal when people quote this too quickly. So I think we're going to learn more about those dealings in Georgia. I think you're absolutely right. This should ring very familiar to many people. And if you go back and look at both what we've reported in the Georgia Record, and Hank Sullivan has done at least one Substack on this notion of the Seven Mountains Mandate. And I think it was his work that said this was something that was being espoused by certain people. He, I believe, named Charlie Kirk as one of those. He also named Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House, that who have claimed openly that they are followers or believers or whatever they refer to themselves. These are worrisome things. And I think we're seeing across certainly across more than one religion, that the religion itself is one thing, but then there's often these split off factions, I guess is one way to refer to them. Things that they're not necessarily in alignment with the original foundations of the religion. They seem somehow to be aimed at influence, power, other things often. Can't really explain it. I don't know why that happens, but we've seen it, I think, several times already this year.
Yeah, and as I talked to some men of the cloth today, and I said that's an apparent theology, meaning it's not, the doctrine of Christianity. That's all I had, Bill. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's spend a few minutes. We're going to talk about some of the very interesting things that are going on in the election integrity sphere. And I guess the way to describe this is there's a feeling that, and I think I mentioned it a few minutes ago, the dike is beginning to get some cracks in it. And we're beginning to see, hopefully, positive movement, positive engagement, the right people being involved. And so, in some ways, sometimes, the same people that may have done improper things potentially with elections or have been questioned about it seem now to be getting in trouble, not just in that way, but maybe in other ways. So I wanted to share a couple things. So one that popped out this week is all of a sudden Katie Hobbs in Arizona is now being investigated for bribery, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering even. And the Joint Legislative Committee has informed Maricopa County's investigator that the Auditor General is going to be looking into this. And so all of a sudden, Katie Hobbs is no longer able to claim that she's such a great support for the people of Arizona. In fact, she is now having to, I'll call it, run for the hills when the press is around. Let's take a look at this.
Hey, I'm very sorry.
Governor, it's been a week since you vetoed a bill. What do you want? Why won't you take any questions? It's been 4 weeks, Governor, since you've had a gaggle. Why are you avoiding the public? Why are you avoiding the press, Governor? It's been 4 weeks, Governor. Oh, that's the sound of a suburban door. Thank you.
Quote of the week. But isn't it funny? And we've seen this before. We saw it with questions being aimed at Elizabeth Warren and others as people begin to find out just how much money these folks have made that is inexplicable. We just saw this week that Nancy Pelosi apparently had, I believe the number is about 16,000% increase in her investments during her time in Congress. Started with, I think, $780,000, and she's now at $133 million. How do you explain that? She beat the Dow itself. How could you do that? Yeah. So, we don't know, but I have a funny feeling we're moving in some interesting directions. The other person that we have recommended that people keep their eyeballs on is Ed Martin, who is the Deputy Attorney General of the U.S., and he is the gentleman who has seated a grand jury to look into Fulton County and their infamous ballots that they apparently don't want to turn over and have anybody look at. We've reported this again and again and again. This is the substance and foundation of the Joe Rossi and Kevin Moncla case and complaints that have been made before the SEB, and that members of the SEB have struggled apparently to try to keep under wraps for reasons we can't explain. We reported in the last couple of weeks about efforts by the chairman to keep a member from attending one of the meetings so they wouldn't be able to get a second for Jan Johnston's motion that might have moved this case forward. So Ed Martin, Deputy Attorney General, he appeared with Bannon this week, and he made some very interesting comments. There's actually 2 videos. Let me play this one first, and you can get a sense of him. And gosh, I have a good feeling about him. I have a good feeling about what we showed last time. He is literally trolling Fulton County by posting pictures of himself and Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamboat. So you can't get more fun than that. Let's hear what he had to say during his visit with Bannon.
About the 2020. I mean, one of the things that we keep pressing is that we have to adjudicate 2020.
Yes.
It's absolutely, it's the railhead of so much of the problem in the country.
Right.
And now you've seen the auto pen, the auto pen pardons, the auto pen executive orders, which I think are even worse. Tell me, why did you put this out today at the same time?
Well, two things. One is, Kurt Olson. Kurt Olson was recently appointed by the president to work on election integrity. What people may not know, and it's not a secret, is that inside DOJ, myself and a couple others have been working also on the same topic. So, you see whether it's Fulton County has these ballots we're worried about.
Why do we just deputize some U.S. Marshals to go down and seize them?
Yeah, everybody thinks it's everybody thinks it's easier. It's a challenge. Look, we've got to get them, and my bet is they're not there. I've always thought that they say they're there, and that I think they're long ago shredded because of and destroyed. But that's just my own opinion. We'll see. But more importantly, there is a court.
That's a bombshell.
Well, it would be. Let me say that's just me guessing. As important as they are,
they don't think you keep the evidence around that they would put them all in prison.
At this point, it's 4.5 years later. They're fighting to keep them secret. The court ordered them being held. The clerk has them supposedly down the hall. They won't let us see them to review them. Like, what? If they want to prove that the election was fine, show it to us. We have enough concerns. We've raised enough serious concerns. So my thinking is, if it's that important to them, who knows what happened? But we'll see. I'm just me reacting to how much they fought. But so why, when we talked about the pardon of these alternate electors, at the heart of it was a desire, it seemed, the conduct of these electors. They were being shut down. They were being silenced. And why? And the question was, what happened in the 2020 election? And so when we went back and looked at it, our goal was to pardon these electors. And when you pardon the alternate electors, you got to make the case and look closely at it. And what we saw was people, again, ordinary Americans, Steve, regular people, and their lawyers and others saying, let's use the system the way we're supposed to.
So isn't that interesting? He talks about the pardoning of the electors. Now, keep in mind that this is one of the things that Fannie Willis here in Georgia and in a number of other states, these folks were arrested. They've been unduly persecuted, prosecuted, and many have spent thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands to try to protect themselves when they did nothing wrong to begin with. They were simply chosen as alternate electors, which has been done at a number of times in the past. And so this should be very, very interesting. Notice how openly he speaks about his thinking. He openly says, they may have gotten rid of these already. Maybe that's what why they don't want to let anybody see them. Maybe there's nothing to see. If there is something to see, what would it prove or what would it show? Well, we don't know yet, but we are coming up to a very important time. Garland Favorito posted this in the last few days. Will your secrets remain hidden, Fulton County? You have 4 days to comply. This was posted on November 11th. So by the end of this week, theoretically, they have a duty to comply. Now, will Fulton County do what they've done with other things? Will they simply avoid? Will they say they don't have to? Will they just continue to resist? Well, we don't know yet, but it is interesting because they have been very resilient in standing up to even direct court orders. For example, ordering them to seat 2 Republican members of the Board of Elections and Registration in Fulton County. They've simply refused. They said, we don't care. And they made, I believe 2 or 3 of them went to the extent of literally making videos to say, we really don't care. Seems astounding to simply say that to a court and to a judge. Most judges would take exception to that and hold them in direct contempt almost instantly. In this case, they held the court held them in civil contempt and is fining folks $10,000 a day. But guess who's paying for it? Fulton County's paying for it, and the people of Fulton are paying for it. So is anybody really doing anything? We'll see.
I interviewed Patrick Byrne briefly this morning. He had about 10 minutes on, and he had the same comments that they just don't care. They're just the rule. They don't care about the rule of law. It's out the window. They just are trying to do what they want. So we have to hold them accountable. That's the trick.
That is the trick, because if you wonder whether our court system is in fact capable of holding them accountable, you wonder, well, if not, then what? What's it going to take? Yeah. And who and when, of course. So I thought this was an interesting thing to discuss, because even Garland and company are now, almost doing the same thing, almost trolling Fulton County, taunting them that something's coming. And so we found that, remarkable and very, very fun. Cool. There's also been a couple of other reports. James O'Keefe is doing his normal thing and catching people as they lunch. And he caught one of the folks that they have evidence of manipulating or pushing a voter or voters' opinions and potentially their actual vote. And I thought we'd play this because it is another great example of, this stuff is now coming to the fore, and people are able to see this was really going on, and they're finding it left and right as we go almost each day. Here we go.
How are you doing? This is James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. We have you on tape admitting to coercing voters and bribing voters with gifts. This is you on video telling someone who to vote for, which is a violation of federal law and state law.
Now, on here, you chose a Republican, not a Democrat, right? Can I do that? You can vote for whoever you want, but our conversation that we had, you said you were voting for a hater because you were going straight Democrat. So that way you're voting for the straight Dem. Is that what you want to do, correct? And she was like, well, yeah, you know what, you're right.
And then she changed, she was clearly voting for John Cornyn.
Do you think it's okay to change people's votes for them like you did with Ms. Do you think that's acceptable?
I refuse to talk to you right now.
You're on tape doing it. Do you not see that? Look at this.
This is what they asked me to say, so no.
Okay, but you actually did that.
I'm done. I'm leaving.
Well, we're going to leave with you if you're going to leave, because you bragged.
I don't want to talk.
You bragged that you and your partner go into polling booths with voters and sign an affidavit that you can enforce. Do you think that's legal?
That's a lie. You're lying.
I want the biggest candidate. Everybody's mad.
Which one's that?
Mom. I got the millionaire. A millionaire that's like, go do whatever you need to do. Here's all my credit cards. I don't take advantage of him. I tell everybody, I don't work for man.
Fascinating. As we were talking before the show, I think the call sign for the bad guys is if you're sitting at lunch and James O'Keefe sits down and takes a seat, probably a good time to get the check.
Definitely. Well, let's take a break, Bill.
Okay.
So we're going to pay for some bills here and hear from my sponsors. We'll be right back.
Okay, great.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight. And then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You are not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
So just a few things on that, Bill. If retirement's a big one, we talk about divorce and death and estate planning and all that with David Cross. But if you need to plan for your retirement, he's the guy, and to make sure that you have the assets to get to where you want in retirement and live the kind of life you want in retirement. So go to usassetmanagement.com. That's us-am.com, and talk to David Cross. He's highly trusted, and we've had great experience with clients with him. And the wellness company, wow, we're moving into possibly the next pandemic. So make sure you're protecting your family. Go to twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM, and check out the website, check out all their products, and just spend some time on the website and look at what they have, from the weight loss to the parasite cleanse to all the emergency medical kits like this, which I take everywhere on the road that I go. Also, a new product they have out is Mars, which is their testosterone supplement. A lot of people are looking at testosterone shots, which have all kind of negative side effects, but this is natural, and it's their new product. So take a look at that. And then last but not least is Nucleo Boost. I use it all the time. It's how I stay on the road 24/7. Go to cdmnutrition.com, look at the capsules, and look at the subscription. It's much cheaper. Take a look. All right, Bill, back to you.
Oh, that's great. So we're going to show a video in just a few minutes regarding one of the counties in Georgia. And the reason we're going to do it is because I don't think it's an isolated problem, but I think what you're going to hear described is a problem we should all be aware of, so we can watch and have early warning awareness in our own counties all across Georgia and potentially around the country. Before we get there, I did want to surface something that I learned of today. There is the Georgia GOP has sent out a survey to state committee members asking for feedback. So if you are a state committee member, you should listen up. If you have someone in your family or a friend, get them what I'm going to tell you next so that they can take appropriate action. I heard today that this survey had gone out, and for reasons that apparently are inexplicable, they sent it, and I am a member of the state committee in Georgia of the GOP. They didn't send me one. When I asked about it, I'd been sent a copy by someone else that did receive it, and I inquired from the person that was distributing these, and apparently she had a wrong email address for me. How would that occur after I just got through reconfirming the same email address that I've used with the Georgia GOP for now 4 years? Nobody can explain, and I don't have an explanation for it, but I do now have the survey and have completed it. What I am told is that folks that do not, on the state committee, that don't complete this, there will be apparently an effort to identify those who fail to complete the survey. And lists may be given of those to the district chairman in the districts that these folks belong to. So why would you do that? I'm not sure, but it doesn't sound like a very motivational thing. And they don't appear to be making it very public that this is the plan. Perhaps they are, and again, they're not copying me on it. But so here's the action item. We will attempt to make sure that everybody on the state committee has the link to complete this. It is to be completed, I am told, by Friday the 14th, which is really just 2 days away now. And it asks for feedback in a number of areas. Now, some of the areas seem to be asking for greater power for the state GOP, and they don't seem to say state GOP committee in some cases. So it's unclear who would get this extra power, whether it be the executive committee, the chairman, or somebody else. I won't characterize those. Everybody gets to make their own decisions. But I do think that the questions, as I read them, need to be carefully read and carefully considered and think through the implications of each answer. But again, we highly encourage everybody that is a member of the state committee, make sure you get the survey. Please make sure you get it done by the 14th. In trying to identify people that failed to complete it, I just couldn't really explain it, but it reminded me of a management text that I read some years ago. And there's two sort of management approaches to people. One is to, you run around the factory floor and you're trying to catch somebody doing something wrong. And that's rarely a good way to motivate people, rarely a good way to manage people. It has a tendency to backfire. What the alternative is to catch people doing something right. And so it just seemed like an odd approach to me based on everything that I've heard so far. So we do hope that everybody in the state committee will get it. Everybody in the state committee will complete it. And hopefully with well-considered answers, we'll be able to provide some feedback to the Georgia GOP Inc., to make more appropriate decisions going forward. Okay. So with that covered, we have reported in the last couple of weeks that Hank Sullivan has announced that he will be running for the county commission in Forsyth County. Earlier this week, there was a launch party for him, launch event, where a number of folks, including some elected officials, got up and spoke on Hank's behalf and on behalf of the county. In many cases, raising their concerns about some of the dynamics that seem to have emerged in Forsyth County specifically in the past, call it decade, maybe a little bit longer. And I'd like to play a portion of this. You will find the same video up on X. You'll find it on our CDM Rumble channel. You'll find it on Insist on Truth Rumble channel. And there's actually two. One is a gentleman, Bill Fielder, who was one of the hosts for the evening, very well-spoken gentleman, and I think 28-year resident of Forsyth County. And then a speech by Hank himself. We're going to hear from Bill Fielder because I found his comments to be the type of thing that I wonder if we would find this elsewhere. And so I wanted to share this with folks this evening. We may not play all of it, but we'll play a bit so people can get a sense of the kinds of things that he's been saying. Here we go.
Has shifted tremendously under our feet over the last 10 years. And not really for the betterment of its citizens. Our liberty is being restricted under our noses almost month by month by the leadership of this county. There is a pale over this county, and it was brought to us. Now, I'm a Georgia boy. I'm from South Georgia, so I'm not really a Forsyth Countyan, but I've been here since 1998, and there are a lot of good people who've come here. But it has been brought to us by literally some carpetbaggers, and it's kind of crazy the way the whole thing has developed. But there is a pale over this county. The rights of landowners and businesses are being restricted. Now, look, in the corporate world, in the business world, in the company world, there are limitations set forth by government that happened at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. And it basically says an industry can't consolidate unless it's unusual circumstances, but an industry can't consolidate down to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 players. It's not that those players, if there were only 1 or 2 in an industry, would act badly, but it is that because those players could act badly given the right opportunities. So we in America got smart enough, because when those players act badly, then it restricts the liberty and the opportunity of the population that they serve. We've got candidates and people in power who've run on Christianity on their sleeve, okay? And they've run on, we'll stop the traffic. We're going to address your traffic problems, all right? And some of those people are the same people who are bringing the biggest traffic problem for South County is ever going to see. It's called the gathering, okay? Now, I'm not saying the gathering is a good thing. I'm not saying the gathering is a bad thing. I'm just saying that the people who said they're going to help you with your traffic are bringing the biggest traffic problem for South County. It will be like Phipps Plaza in Buckhead. That's the plan. Make no mistake about it, okay? And they are telling you, oh, we build additional exits off of 400 to take care of the traffic problems, because all those high-end shops are going to end up here eventually over time. And that's just a fact. And I don't know if you've ever driven through Buckhead during rush hour traffic with that one exit that takes care of that shopping area, but it backs up 400 for miles most days, right? And that's what we're going to have here. Now, will it help the tax base? Yeah, it'll help the tax base. Will it bring employment? Yeah, it'll bring employment. It'll have a lot of good stuff. I'm just saying, we got people who are bringing this to us who said they weren't going to do this. And we have limitations on our property use. So now Hank has been bright enough to figure out for us, because he's paying attention, that if you're a landowner and you've been doing something that's been okay for decades or 100 years or whatever, the people in power in this county have decided that if they decide that it's not okay anymore, then they're going to remove your liberties. So this really isn't about us owning property. I don't own this house. The county lets me buy it, use it, and then I'll turn it over to somebody else. But in the meantime, they own it.
So I wanted to give a preface to that video. Again, folks can see it in its entirety, and also the comments that Hank Sullivan made himself following Mr. Fielder's talk. But he goes on to talk about the fact that there are folks that really seem to be motivated by power, control, and other things that are very much provably not in the interest of the residents of Forsyth County. And you can see decisions that have now been made that have drastically increased the number of multifamily developments, drastically increased retail intrusion into what once was mainly horse country in many parts of the county. It was a beautiful county when I first moved here myself. And many of those areas are now taken up with retail strip centers and other things. Why? Well, is it as simple as they want the tax revenue? Perhaps. But this continues to increase. And you heard Mr. Fielder talk about the gathering, which is to be built off 400, and how it's going to change essentially the entire character of Forsyth County. So I was lucky enough to be there. I heard the comments, and they just struck a chord with me that was so clear that I thought, this is one of those things that we need to warn people about, not just for Forsyth County, but in other counties, because I think this is probably happening elsewhere at the same time.
In other states, Bill, not just
in other states. We've talked about things going on in Connecticut and probably all over the country. There's this funny undercurrent of, gosh, is this a plan? Do they have conference calls where people coordinate doing this stuff? And remember, we just got through talking about the fact that these county commissioners, some of them are using a private Facebook group to be able to talk about things not in the public eye. And so when they're in the public eye, things seem to get decided so quickly and easily. Well, a number of folks the other night spoke of, well, that's because, they're cooking the soup before they ever get into the public hearing, apparently, at least in part. So Again, folks can find the remainder of that, but we want and encourage folks to be involved in watching their own counties so that where this begins to happen, perhaps folks can get involved even earlier to head it off and stop it before it goes too far. So with that, I think you had a couple other things that you wanted to share before we get to the end.
Yeah, you and I were lucky enough to sit down with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen last week, and I want to play some of that interview. We're not going to get through all of it, but I'll play the entire interview tomorrow on the Skiff, second hour, probably at 11 a.m. Eastern. But we'll just play some of this and give you insight in what he sees from a polling perspective across the country. We're back with Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen, friend of the show. Mark, thanks for joining us last minute. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's been a while.
It has been a while. So I wanted to get you on because you're putting out a lot. And by the way, your X account is on fire. I've noticed that. You must have it, like you do it while you're sleeping or something. I don't know. But
it's attached to my hand day in and day out. And I take extra special asshole pills so that I can, that's my secret.
That works. So you mentioned before the show we were chatting that this is become a national issue. The local polls really don't matter. But give us your impression of what's happening nationally politically.
Yeah, I mean, this gets into some deep societal, psychological aspects, unfortunately, but we've talked about this before, how basically the impending fourth turning crisis is literally at our door right now, at the doorstep. And I think that if people aren't familiar with that term, we could go down the rabbit hole. But ultimately, if you look around you, I think everybody could maybe agree that society is fraying. There's increased divorce rates, drug usage, lack of integrity in every single institution and the way things are governed, full rent-seeking behavior in corporations, just complete double-fisted kleptocracy out of both sides of the government. And it's going to come to a screeching halt soon because we're running towards a cliff. I mean, we have a financial cliff. We have a geopolitical cliff. I think everybody is aware of this looming two-front war with China and Russia that NATO is just slobbering to get into. So that's a problem. And history tells us that these things pop up every 80 to 90 years. And what happens is there's a major crisis because institutions hit rock bottom. And then there's a bottom-up pull, like a societal pull towards a new set of values and new generation of leadership. And I think we are literally at the cusp, and you can witness it right now just by looking at what is going on with Israel. Now, do I think Israel is the most important topic? No, I don't. But it happens to be the one that I think is on the leading edge of this trend because it means so much to the Republican Party and because Israel, quite frankly, through really bad PR, has totally screwed itself. But what you can see is that there's a huge, huge age difference. Just one tracking question we asked, do you support Israel or Palestine more? Only 21% of voters under 30 support Israel. 59% of 65 and older support Israel. So it's this symbol of a complete break in values between these older people and the young new people who, quite frankly, have been given a very, 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 very raw deal by society, and they're upset about it. And so everybody looked at November 2024 and said, oh, the country's saved. Everybody's moving right. Everything's going to be Republican now. There's a preference cascade. And that's actually not what happened. What happened is the young people were kind of invigorated by the way that Trump spoke to them authentically and Kamala Harris didn't. And they liked this idea of ripping apart the government with Doge. And if you literally look at the search trend volume for the word Doge, it spikes the exact same week, literally the same week to the day that Donald Trump hit a 60% approval rating with under 40 voters. His approval rating with under 40 voters is 40% now. So he's lost 20% of them. 18 to 29s, he's lost 35% of support just between then and now. And so those people are also independent people. They're younger people. They're minorities. They're people that pushed Trump into success, way more success in places like New Jersey. And those people that didn't show up this week at all. In fact, in New York City, they voted for Mamdani. And so this is, I think, the wake-up call that the Republicans need, which is, and this is the Republican Party, let's agree, is the face of boomer values, of corporatism, of establishment. They're literally probably the primary actors that messed society so much up for these people because they didn't stand up for traditional marriage. They didn't look into the mental health crisis. They offshored all these people's jobs. They're the ones buying the houses. They have like the home builder lobbies. Like, it is really the Republican Party that screwed these people over, and they were given a chance. All they had to do was rapidly change the societal fabric. I know that's hard, but that's what the expectations are. And so now I'm afraid that they're going to go into the arms of people like Mamdani, because the siren song of socialism is pretty great right now. And the Republican Party has absolutely no answer, period, whatsoever. They're ripping each other apart right now. They don't look like a unified force at all. It's like a complete and utter mess.
Well, let's look behind that. I've always thought that Trump made some kind of deal to get elected, and the deal had something to do with, here's a lot of money, we'll get you in office, but you got to attack Iran, or whatever has to be done for that agenda, the wars, whatever. But what is pushing the change in Trump once he got into office? What is doing that, do you think?
Well, there's two separate things. There's Trump and the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at Trump, I say, well, he had a very unique thing that was very marketable. Mm-hmm. And what it was is like, hey, I'm a new person that's going to get in. I'm not tethered to the existing sort of like donor class. It was a new way for people with money to bet on an investment, which is, I'll back this guy and he'll get into office. And maybe we don't even have to give him as much money because he doesn't suck as a candidate. And so now my interests are going to be represented. I hate to say it like that, but that's the reality. And so he's surrounded by wealthy people that help him get into office that want stuff. He openly talks about it. He talked about Miriam Adelson and how all she wants is stuff for Israel. And again, I'm not picking on Israel. Like, he came out and said that.
Yeah.
And so I can only assume that every single business interest is like that. But I also think that probably more than other politicians, he has the ability to push back because he is who he is, and he did what he did to the Republican Party. But I also think there's an aspect of just a bubble. I think there are people that know stuff, but I think that I've heard that InfoSec is pretty tight at the White House. And I can point to the Epstein thing, which I think lost him millions of independents, the way he handled that. And I was screaming. And everybody on the right told me to shut up, stop being a black pillar. And I was like, nope, this is the signal that you just gave independent voters that you're not serious about what you campaigned on. And they didn't fix it at all. And I don't know why they couldn't. But then you have the Republican Party, who, again, did very well in November of 2024, thought it was because of themselves. Turns out it was because people were giving Donald Trump a chance. And these people just are who we thought they were. They are bought and paid for by literally everything under the sun. They will make more money in the minority, and America will get screwed. They will probably shut down Twitter, impeach Donald Trump, pack the courts, use the nuclear option. And the Republicans literally don't care. And they're doing nothing. Mike Johnson talked a really good game on November 12th about the MAGA mandate and how he was going to hang a MAGA banner in the halls of Congress, and they didn't. And obviously foreign interests are part of that, but it's the corporate interest as well. Have we seen any COVID accountability? We've seen literally no accountability. The only person, as far as I know, that actually has delivered for the American people is Representative James Comer, who gave his oversight committee gave that AutoPen report. What else have we really seen? You're not going to convince me that a Mike Bolton and James Comey indictment is anywhere near good enough. In fact, the fact that they exist is almost even worse, because it almost says, well, these people are trying, but the system's so broke that it can't be fixed. And we're getting to a place where people want the system torn down. I'm sorry. It's called burn it down politics, and that's where we're at.
Bill?
So that's a great pickup spot for me. So when you say burn the system down, let's talk about that for a minute. So we're talking about substantive change, right? And when you're looking at these young folks that you started your discussion with, what was the sense? They were in support of Doge, is that correct? They were in support of big change, I think, is what I heard from you.
Yeah, 18 to 39-year-olds voted over 20 points in favor of Hillary Clinton in my polling. And now, for them to have a 60% Trump approval rating, that is a massive, massive, massive reversal. and they lost it again. And it was when we were talking about auditing Fort Knox and ending the Fed. We're going to audit the Fed. We're going to audit the DOD. Everybody was talking about fraudulent payments within Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Elon Musk was promising $1 trillion in deficit improvement. And then, what happened is, like, right after that, the Republican Party shoved him in a ditch because they wanted to pay themselves with pork with this reconciliation bill. They passed the clean CR. They said, I literally think this is how it happened. I think that everybody came in and was really surprised by what Elon was doing. And then they realized, well, this shock and awe is very useful to me. Like, we're getting away with a lot of stuff here. And they were. I think they could have ignored judges. I think they could have been, like, blowing up these drug boats. I think they could have been doing a lot more stuff back then. That was the time to really, like, raid the cities. And I understand that, like, ICE was limited and stuff like that. But there are no easy answers. There really aren't. We're in the field now with questions. And I'm going to see, like, what people's real feelings are towards the idea of, like, a Caesar, like an executive that can legislate. So we'll see. But again, I think what happened is it came time to, the debt ceiling was coming, and there was Chuck Schumer was talking about shutting down the government, and essentially they called his bluff. He had to cave, and they signed that clean CR. And I think what happened is Congress said to Donald Trump, listen, here's the deal. The only way you're going to get your laws done is if we do reconciliation. And, oh, by the way, we have 4 years of things that have been piling up, all these favors we have to pay each other, all this pork, all the grease that, the gears of Washington, D.C. Are lubricated with. And Donald Trump had to say, well, okay, do I threaten a government shutdown? Is that what I want in the beginning of my term? Or do I give these guys what they need and hopefully get a win out of it? And I think he decided that he wanted to win, and that was more important to him than Elon Musk, which is the best thing that he ever had. And so basically the right had their George Soros, and the Republican Party said, screw off. And then they got the one big, beautiful bill, and it, like, didn't do anything. And so, why did it not?
I'm going to end it there, but the rest of the interview will play tomorrow on the second hour of the Skiff. But you got anything else?
That was a great interview, and we very much appreciated having him on.
Yeah.
It's notable too that Rasmussen has done a wonderful job keeping up on Georgia and all the strange stuff that's going on. I remember you and I were up in Washington, D.C. when they released the report showing that I think 65% of Georgian voters had a concern about our election. So it was more than half, and they were the ones to find it. So give them a lot of credit, and they have some very interesting views.
All right. That's all I got. I'll see you tomorrow on the Skiff, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday, Eastern.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you soon.